Welcome to the On the Rise podcast, where we talk about time freedom, passive investing through real estate, finance, mindset, and how to integrate your faith into your work. Let's dive in. Quick disclaimer as always, I'm not a CPA, I'm not an attorney or a financial advisor. This is not financial advice. I'm not telling you or anyone else what to do. The views and opinions expressed in these podcasts are provided for education and informational purposes only and are not necessarily the views of my employer. Welcome to the On the Rise podcast. I'm your host, Nick Stromwall. This is going to be a great episode. I got to know our guest a couple weeks ago. I'm really excited to bring him on. This is the new Faith-Driven Leaders series where we're really teaching leaders how to incorporate their faith into their everyday work. So we're bringing on guests who are leaders in various industries that are really leading with excellence, but also incorporating their faith into their everyday work. So today we have a special guest, Ryan Sudeck. Ryan, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me, Nick.
I'm just going to read a little bio and then would love for you to fill in the gaps. So Ryan Sudeck is the CEO of Sage Investment Group, an Inc. 5000 recognized real estate platform specializing in converting distressed hotels into naturally affordable workforce housing, no public subsidy required. Since becoming CEO in 2023, Ryan has scaled Sage to over 3,000 units across 6 states with a goal of 15,000 units by 2030. A Stanford economics graduate, he previously closed deals worth up to $14 billion across roles at Amazon, Redfin, Samsung, and PwC. He's been an active real estate investor for over a decade. What a bio. What are we missing in that, or where else would you fill in the gaps?
Yeah, I think it captures the professional bio pretty well. At Sage, it's I'm definitely humbled to be able to help lead a team of over 30 people, and we've got a pretty rare opportunity because we're trying to address this very acute need in the United States of naturally affordable housing, right? That there is an affordability crisis, and while still being able to produce good returns for our investors. So I like to think that we have two different customers, right? We have our tenants and our residents as customer, and we have our investor as customer. And the beautiful thing with that is we can do good, but also have it be good business. And Sage has been around for over 6 years now, and I think we've really proven that, and we've really stepped into that as our essence. So I think you hit all the professional highlights there, Nick, in the intro. Thank you.
Yeah, what's the origin story of like why tackle this problem? There's a lot of problems in the world, but what was the emphasis on solving the affordability crisis?
Yeah, I mean, it started. It wasn't something that we said, all right, there is an affordability crisis, let's go solve it, right? It didn't start in this kind of inspirational like boardroom moment. My partners and myself had been doing value add multifamily investing. So we were buying multifamily properties, we were fixing them up, we were making them better, we were producing a return for us and the partners that we were working with. And an opportunity came across my partner's desk back in 2019 to buy a hotel in Tucson, Arizona. It was a 175 room hotel. Half of it had already been converted to student housing. And the business plan was to convert the second half to student housing because, as we looked at it, these rooms are 300-ish square feet. Surely students, 5 blocks from the University of Arizona would be willing to live in this place that's, beautifully designed, but small rooms. Fast forward, we delivered the property in 2020 in the middle of COVID. There were no students coming back on campus. And so we had to pivot. And what happened in that pivot is we just went out to the general market. And what we found is people from all walks of life, from, coming out of college or high school, going out on their own, leaving their parents and roommate situations, all the way through, aging in place, fixed income adults needed an affordable place to live. And in 3 months, we were full. And that was kind of the light bulb moment for us. We ended up selling the property 19 months later. It generated a great financial return for us. But we learned 2 things in that. One, there are a few different demographics really covering, all age spectrums, all walks of life, but so many people that need an affordable, well-designed place to live. And then that's and then on the other end of the spectrum, like this is also a really good investing strategy because you can buy a just distressed hotel and convert it to a multifamily, which is a higher and better use.
Got it. Okay, cool. So when you're doing this conversion, what kinds of things go into that? What is the kind of the before scope of what the property looks like? How much are you putting into it, and what is the end product? Are these individual condos that people buy like in an association, or what's the setup?
Yeah, the end product is an apartment community. So people are renting these apartments from us. Typically, we're buying properties between 100 and 200 units in them, and when we're done the renovation, they live like a brand new Class A building down the street. But our rents are usually $300 to $500 less per month than what that Class A, luxury studio is going to cost you down the street. But we still have a lot of amenities because we take the conference rooms and the ballrooms and the gyms and the fitness centers that a hotel has, and we repurpose them for our residents. We might take, conference space and turn it into co-working space. We might take we have 16,000 square feet of a ballroom in one of our properties that we turned into this incredible gym and lounge. And, it's got golf simulators. We put in walking paths and dogs parks really for our residents, to not just have a roof over their head that's naturally affordable, but to have a community, right? Because, I think one of the big challenges in society today is, people don't have as many friends. They don't have as many connections, right? I think faith plays into that as well. But our goal is to have our residents not just live and have a roof over their head, but also thrive in the communities that we're building. So, we've done over 30 of these projects. There's a lot that goes into certainly the interior renovation to add kitchens and paint and casework and new bathrooms. But so much of the work is on the infrastructure too. About half of what we spend is on things like adding electrical sub panels and adding sprinkler systems and putting on new roofs and windows and other things that are required to take this building from a commercial use to be suitable for residential use.
That's amazing. Okay, cool. And what markets are you currently in? Where are you targeting?
Yeah, we're in 6 states right now. I'm based in Kirkland, Washington, just outside of Seattle. We've got a good portion of our properties are here in the state of Washington. We also have properties in Texas, Dallas, and Houston, also North Carolina, South Carolina. We have a big focus on those areas where the affordability crisis is so dramatic, right? The high rent districts. This is where folks who are working in a hospital as a nurse or as a waiter or waitress or a military professional might have to commute 45 minutes plus each way to find natural relief and affordability. But we can create housing for about half of what it takes to build from the ground up and have that natural affordability and really change the way that they can live their lives, which is incredibly satisfying. So we've got a big pipeline of projects for the rest of this year and going forward. But making a push into California, both into the Bay Area and Southern California. That's kind of where I see the most opportunity outside of the markets that we're in already.
That's awesome. And so, I mean, as cities hear about what you guys are doing, are you getting incoming like, "Hey, come do some projects in our city"? What is that like for you as one of the leaders of Sage?
We have gotten cities that have asked us to come as more folks have learned about the good work we've done. For example, in Tacoma, Washington, which is, for those who don't know, is a city just south of Seattle. We purchased 4 hotels in an area known as the Hosmer District. And the Hosmer District used to be responsible for 10% of the murders in Washington state. It's just crime ridden. The police would send 3 officers to any calls that they got on that street. We took over, those 4 properties that were harboring a lot of folks that were doing bad things, drug dealing, trafficking, like really bad criminals. And it's been a total community transformation. So, since then, since we bought our first property, there have been no murders on the street. The police now send one officer in response to phone calls. I think that's like probably the strongest, metric I could give. And so that word kind of got out to other sister cities. And so we've had some of those, city councils and mayors and others, asked to come help them out, so to say, in bringing this affordability. We find that when we go into new markets, the politicians and the city councils, when they really understand our mission and what we are, and that we're not asking for government subsidy to make these projects pencil, they really like what we're doing. There's certainly a lot of complexity that comes after that through working through permitting and planning, but yeah, your question is a good one. We've definitely seen some momentum building because of the proof points and the case studies that we have.
As I think it's exciting to hear, not only delivering, returns, affordable housing, but also impacting cities, like from three officers responding to a call to one. I mean, most people don't think about real estate or development or even real estate investing as a means to actually do good. Most people think of it as an opportunity to get, better returns than what you can get in the market, or not just cash flow, but cash flow appreciation and tax savings. Are you is this what's drawing more investors in? Is the impact, or how does that factor into your overall equation as you take on more investors and more opportunities?
It's something that we really believe now, and we've really stepped into. We wrote a kind of a Sage manifesto that we use internally, and it's not something we shared externally, and maybe we will in time. But it talks about rejecting the false choice between profit and purpose in what you do, and so that's I think that we've seen it attract investors certainly, and it's part of our narrative, about the doing good can also be good business, right? That tagline that I said earlier. We see investors who want to see impact in their dollars. I've had folks recently tell me, I know you're going to take good care of my money. I don't, I want to see a great return. I know you're talking about great returns, but even knowing that I'm having impact is enough for me to make this investment, which is, very humbling, and it's a great thing for us. I think where I've seen it more tangibly is in hiring, in the people that we attract to Sage. We're a team of over 30 people, and it's part of what we talk about in our ethos, is that mission, of what we're trying to solve for, and addressing the affordable housing crisis. And the folks that have joined us over the last few years, really come in and are attracted to us because of that.
That's really cool. Yeah. Could you kind of unpack just mission, vision of Sage? I think it'd be cool for our listeners to hear. And then love to double click on the profit and purpose, whatever you can share there. I think that really would, yeah, be insightful to our listening audience. A lot of leaders who are running businesses that are maybe stepping into investing, or even our experienced investors, that they're wrestling with that tension of profit and purpose, or what is the very means of the investment dollars? What is it producing? Is it purely just getting more resources for resource sake, or is there actually impact tied to the investment itself? So yeah, unpack that a little bit for us.
Yeah. So as I mentioned earlier, I think it's a false choice to choose between the two, and I kind of say that from a position of privilege because I get to live it. Like I feel incredibly blessed and humble to have been invited into the Sage family and be able to have this business model that lets us do this. But I think the thesis is that the private sector, when you're disciplined, when you're patient, and when you have the right alignment of incentives, can actually solve real problems at scale. And it's not just through charity or just through government help. It doesn't rely on subsidy. And so, but for us, that means transforming underutilized assets into their highest and best use. So we're trying to find the value where other people just see obsolescence, and we're trying to build communities where things are decay, or where others might say, "Oh, this looks too risky." Um, and I think our thesis is that addressing the housing affordability crisis is not something that the government's going to help solve overnight, right? We need capital, we need operational excellence, we need people that are going to relentlessly execute on it. Um, and so, we also see our model as just a faster and cheaper and more sustainable way to do it as well. So yeah, I don't know if that answered your question.
No, that's really helpful.
Happy to unpack that more.
Because I think when you find a business opportunity where you're not only generating a profit, which is important for business, but you're also having impact in the very investment itself, that does draw people in that want to have a greater purpose. And if you can pull off your business plan without having to rely on government subsidies, that's a net win. Are you? I mean, when you say no government subsidies, like even like tax credits, does that factor into the overall equation?
We have in two markets, we've gotten tax abatements on our properties. We did not assume that in our underwriting. It was something we found out about after the fact. We've kind of been just focused on doing our work over the last few years. So we haven't gotten any tax credits at all. We are looking at that though, right? Because ultimately we are stewards of capital for our investors and our own capital because, myself and my partners are the largest LPs in our evergreen fund. So we're looking at ways to, improve the returns. And what we're finding is that there are programs that we just naturally check the boxes for because we're creating a product for those folks between 30% and 80% of area median income. And there are tax abatement programs where you pay less on your property taxes if you're meeting that need. And a lot of times when you're building ground up, like a developer will, intentionally reserve a section of units for that. For us, our entire property is that way. There are some challenges in navigating those. With anything in government, like nothing moves fast. There's a lot of red tape. There's a lot of process, and there's little snags that kind of come up that are meant to, prevent gaming the system that actually have hurt us, like restrictions on unit size. Like your units need to be of a certain size. Well, all that's because they don't want developers building a bunch of tiny little rooms in this big master community and getting tax benefits. Well, for us, all of our units are exactly the same. Or that's just one example of where like kind of good intentions have introduced more friction for us. And so we're working with the jurisdictions, and we've got a great head of community relations who's on our team, Whitney, and our head of planning, Jeff, who really are the ambassadors of Sage and what we do that help have those conversations.
Yeah, that's really cool. Yeah, we've successfully at Rise implemented a tax abatement strategy in several of our properties. So if it ever helps to share notes, we'd be happy to share notes there because I think it is a net value add, and we're seeing up to even 90% of taxes being abated because of it. So it is a huge opportunity. I think to your point, if you can underwrite it so you don't have to have that, that's also nice to have that more as a bonus too. You were just talking a little bit when we spoke last about just the scale of the opportunity of how many distressed hotels there are currently in the US. And I don't even know, like, has things caught up since COVID or is it still really low? To unpack that a little bit more for us.
Yeah, the hotel market is, I think, a tale of two cities, a K-shaped recovery. Use whatever metaphor you want for it, but you've got the luxury properties that, by and large, are doing really well, and you've got the economy, business travel properties that are not doing well. And I think it kind of mirrors a lot of what's happening in society right now. Rich are getting richer. I think a lot of other folks are struggling. But you've got the same thing in hotels. There are a few really interesting dynamics about the hotel market. One, I believe about 60% of the hotels in the United States are owned by Indian Americans. A lot of folks immigrated to the U.S. from India in the 70s and 80s. They ran these hotels. They a lot of times lived in these hotels, then educated their kids. Their kids have now been wildly successful. They're reaching retirement age, and the kids don't want to run the hotel anymore. So that's one interesting demographic trend. I think another is just the hardship of the industry. We're not doing business travel like we used to post-COVID. I don't even know that Zoom is now a verb. It wasn't a verb 6 years ago. And so you don't have that, kind of highway roadside inn, or even the other purpose-built business travel hotels are not doing well, but they're really well located. They're near restaurants. They're near areas of employment. They're near transit. And so they make a great place to live. So that's another dynamic. I think competition threats are huge, right? If you're a hotel that was built in the 80s and a brand new Marriott goes up down the street, they can kind of take all your guests, because we have this democratization of searchability and reviews, and you want to stay at the, if you're going to pay an extra 15 or 20 bucks a night, like maybe that's worthwhile for you to have a nicer place with more amenities. And then I think the last dynamic is there's this cycle that exists with hotels where you need to improve them, right? You need to make sure that they're nice for your guests. And if you're a franchisee of a Marriott, a Hilton, those franchisors will tell you what brand standards you need to hold to. And so every couple of years, they'll tell you that you have to do what's called a PIP, or a property improvement plan. And you have to spend millions and millions of dollars to replace the carpets and refresh the bathrooms, because they want consistency across their product. When you go to a Residence Inn in Tulsa, Oklahoma, it looks like a Residence Inn in Atlanta, Georgia. And as a hotel owner, if your income's been down, or if your revenue's been down, if your income's down because you're also dealing with wage inflation and other things, you can't justify to yourself paying $3, $5, $8 million to do a property improvement plan if the ROI isn't there. And so we just see a ton of distress in these hotels. And our estimate is that there's about 30,000 in markets that we like, that fit our model in terms of building profile, and also being in the markets that have wage growth, employment growth, and other fundamentals that we need for a real estate investment to be successful.
I'm Zach Haptonstall, CEO and co-founder of Rise 48 Equity. Our goal is to help you protect and grow your wealth by investing in large multifamily apartment buildings. We do all the work as far as sourcing these large apartment buildings from the brokers, doing all of the on-site management with our vertically integrated property management company, doing all the renovations with our vertically integrated construction company. We completely rebrand the exteriors. We will renovate the interiors to our full platinum level scope, which increases the value of the asset to get that profit margin for the investor. If you'd like to learn about how you can partner with us on these exciting opportunities, and go to our website and set up a call with our team.
Thanks for unpacking your business, kind of the why behind it. It sounds like you're growing a team of like-minded people. I want to transition to talk about leadership. You have quite the history of leading in successful companies, from Amazon to Redfin to Samsung, to PwC, in terms of deals and roles in those companies. When did you recognize that you had some leadership skills? Was someone a mentor? Did they call it out? Like, how did you realize that was maybe a gift that God had given you?
I've never been asked that question before. I've never reflected on that. I think it was always an aspiration I had, not from a place of ego, but just from a place of enthusiasm. And I think I benefited very early on in my career from having mentors and managers that gave me a shot. And I can think about a lot of different stops on my journey where there have been those people that gave me a shot, and I was able to perform. I can think of leaders at Redfin and Amazon and other places that I worked for, that I learned a ton from, but had faith and trust in me, and poured into me to help make me better. So I don't think there was any single moment. I do think there were some foundational things from when I was a kid that set me up well. Certainly, having growing up in a loving home with two great parents, going to 12 years of Catholic school with a faith and values based education. I think a lot of lessons I took from also being a competitive rower in both high school and college. And seeing coaches that were leaders and having to work together as a team, but also needing to have the right leadership dynamics within that team to be successful. I think those are some other kind of foundational things that helped me, help me get to where I am.
Yeah, that's really cool. Okay, let's talk about faith for a little bit. How does faith shape your approach to just business and business decisions? How do you incorporate your faith into your business?
Yeah. I think for me, as I mentioned, so I went to 12 years of Catholic school. Kind of grew up in the Catholic faith. And I think where my faith took a much more like practical and applied turn was in high school. So I went to a Jesuit high school in Philadelphia, St. Joe's Prep. And when I was there, I feel like faith became more than, and this isn't to put it down, it's just my evolution, but it became more than someone preaching a sermon on a Sunday. And, I think the Jesuits and the ones that I interacted with and just the way they taught, it was from a place of humility and intellect, right? It was a deep study of, to become a Jesuit priest, it's like, I think like a decade of like intense academic rigor and study. And these are like incredibly brilliant people, but who are also incredibly humble and obviously, led by their faith. And I felt like it turned faith into a more applied thing. And there are certain like mantras that have stuck with me for my life. For example, Cura, some Latin phrases, Cura Personalis, and care for the whole person. And so mind, body, spirit. And I think that is, for me, I think that shows up in two directions in how I lead the team, investing in people's growth, not just trying to extract output. Um, I think my purpose is to make sure the people around me are thriving, both in my professional work and in my personal work. It's also how we think about residents, right? I think there's more that we want to do to help them, thrive and care for the whole person. I think that's one of kind of the pillars of how faith is turned into a practical approach for me. I personally think that I have a good sense of what motivates individuals and what it takes to make one person feel like they're thriving versus another are two completely different things. And sometimes it means even letting them know that it's a different path for them, right? And making a pivot. I think the other thing that stuck with me from high school was just the mantra. It was an all guys school, so it was men for and with others. And so I think that just reframed what success means, that it's not about what you as an individual accumulate, but what, you can continue to build together, as a group, and then it's beyond yourself. And then it's not from, it's not charity or solidarity, but it's doing it with others. And so, I think those are some of the things where those have stuck with me. And I don't talk about my faith in God and Jesus daily. At work, I'm surrounded by people from all walks of life that believe in all different things, but it's really driven through the values and trying to meet folks where they are and build them into thriving individuals.
Man, there's so much there to unpack. I want to ask a couple follow-up questions there. It's really, really helpful. I think you're right. Like, you know, leading with your faith doesn't have to be, hey, here's the last thing I heard, or the last book I read, or this is what the pastor said on over the weekend. But I think there's more caught than taught in a lot of ways. And when your faith comes out through how you lead your teams and through the people you're serving, that almost matters more, because your character and your values of caring for people can really be felt by all people. So you said something about investing in the growth of others and not just output. What does that look like inside of your company in a day-to-day basis?
It can mean spending more time with an individual who needs to talk things out, right? my door's always open, except right now it's shut, since we're talking. But people can come to my office, and I know there are folks where they just need to sound things out. And there's a kind of a journey to get to the answer. And, maybe they lead from the heart, and there's more emotion, and they feel more, right? And I think that is one way to, really make sure they're taken care of, that like I'm hearing where the emotion is coming from, and understanding that, it's coming from a place of deep care. Whereas there are other people I work with, they're just analytical, right? They want to get into the numbers and talk about that, and knowing that when two different people approach things, when two people approach things in a very different manner, it's my job to help translate those things and build a cohesive team in that way.
That was really good. Sometimes people go at a different speed than the leader wants to go, because often leaders are results driven. They want to keep moving forward. And sometimes you just got to let people talk. You got to hear their heart and actively listen. And I think that's really challenging for a lot of leaders, because most leaders, have goals and agenda, and it takes time to deal with people. Relationships are messy and conflict is challenging. How do you learn how to work through that? Like what are you doing to grow as a leader when those situations happen where you have to downshift from fifth gear down to first gear to engage a difficult situation that in your mind is crystal clear what the problem should be, but sometimes you have to help people get to that place themselves through actively listening. What does that look like?
Yeah, for me, it's time. I think it's time, and just lending my ear, and as leaders, sometimes you just like want to jump in and solve it, and I think in our own other personal relationships you might have, like sometimes there's some biases when people are when my wife brings me problems, it's like, oh, I just want to solve them. No, I've learned like I need to hear it, right? There's a certain therapeutic aspect to it to bring them along the journey. And if you can understand all facets there, you're going to be able to get them to the outcome quicker. If someone brings me a problem and, they're having they're talking about something, and, it's affecting them outside of work. Like I know they deeply care about it, but, and that I need to spend the time on that because I care that they're getting a good night's sleep and that this isn't stressing them out at the end of the day. So it's challenging. It's certainly challenging. I think as a leader, you asked just how I'm trying to continue to grow. It can be lonely at times as a leader, and I have a lot of empathy for the CEOs I've worked with in the past, of not really having someone to turn to bounce things off of. I've got great business partners that I get to do that, but that's not for every decision, right? We've all got things to do. So yeah, I've done some leadership coaching recently that's helped a little bit, but I don't think it's a journey that's ever going to be. It doesn't have a destination, right? Always going to be on that journey.
That's awesome. Here's just another question, just about your personal journey when it comes to challenges that you've faced. What's a challenge you faced, in the last season of life and business, where you really had to lean on God, you had to lean on your faith to get through it?
Yeah, I think just the period of growth that we've gone through at Sage. It has been incredibly exciting to grow. It is incredibly challenging to grow too. And especially in a business where, the way our business is structured is, we find deals that we like, and then we go raise capital for them. And keeping deals and capital in balance it's darn near impossible, right? Because either you have too many deals or you have too much capital. And so I think one of the biggest challenges has been trying to, in 2024, my business partners had to take a step back from the business because of some health issues that their son was having, and I was on probably 95% of the investor calls, and we raised $50 million that year, and it was awesome. But as a leader, I then, knew I needed to grow that beyond myself. And so going into 25, trying to find the right people that could, carry the banners and, really bought in and took the care to give that white glove service that we want to give to our investors, I think it's been a challenge, right? We've had people join that we had to ask, go because it didn't work out. And I think we're really starting to get into our groove. But the knock-on effects of trying to delegate that down and trying to keep everything in balance is been very trying. And I think we've come around on the other side of that in a good way. But I think that's been one where I've had to just pause and reflect and ask for that guidance.
Yeah, that's awesome. Before we hit record on this episode, we were talking a little bit about AI, and I think this would be a good moment to bring it up. Both of us really enjoy technology. You were mentioning how you like to have conversations sometimes late into the night with your AI. How is AI helping you as a leader right now? Walk through some of the things you're using it for, and what are you looking forward to for the future too?
Oh man, I feel like my days have fundamentally changed in a massive way in where I spend my time. I feel like I am getting more done in a day, multiples more done in a day than I have before. And my mantra for AI across the company, which we just rolled out Claude across the whole company, is, I want us all to be working on the most strategic things possible, right? And I want us to be getting to better outcomes, right? Better outcomes quicker, right? And that's not to necessarily do more with less, but to use the skills and expertise that each one of our employees has to apply to their job. And so we've done some really cool things on our construction management team, on our investor relations team, on our asset management team, and happy to go into all of those. But I don't know, just one side project. I like on my end, I've done so many different things where, we've compared 4 different general contractor bids for one of our upcoming projects and normalized them, and then, try to figure out which is the best general contractor. And it's a project that it took 2 to 3 weeks for our team to do that, and they get to the good output. But it took Claude an hour or two with some coaching with me sitting next to our head of planning to get it done. We even took the plan set for an upcoming project that we're looking at and compared it to a plan set of another project with the scope of work and then our finish quality, and had Claude basically read these plans that used to take weeks and architects time to pull out, read it in the course of 20-30 minutes, and we were able to get to a rough order of magnitude scope of work, so that then the team can go apply their expertise and say, all right, no, like we need a tweak here, or we need, there's some other things. But man, the time savings. Another example, I've connected Claude up to our website through Webflow connection, and just using it as an SEO expert to build out content and education, and making sure like the meta tags and all the SEO hygiene is there. And our impressions on Google are up 4x week over week. It's really showing through in the results. And that's where I get giddy with all, I could keep going on use cases all day, but I'm also curious to learn. I know you're huge on AI and leaning in, and what you've seen as well.
That's really exciting. I'd love to hear more. I will share one. If you're a leader listening to this, and you're like, hey, where do I start? This is what I would do. I would implement some type of AI note-taking tool. I'm keen on Fireflies, and I would record every single virtual meeting through Teams or Zoom or Google Hangout, and pull it out on your phone and record every single in-person meeting too. They actually make a little pin you can wear around with you all day called Applaud, Plaude, because when you can give AI context, act as a social media coach, act as a CFO of my company, act as a analyst analyzing these 4 construction bids. Here's the context. Here's the output that I want to generate. And this would be, the type of format that I want you to put it in. Then you're training the AI to give you the result that you want. My favorite phrase is ask me one question at a time so that I can get to the desired result of blank. use AI to teach you how to use AI. There's a great influencer out there named Dan Martell. If you're looking to follow someone, he'd probably be the person I would recommend. But I do have an AI specialist that's going to be coming on the podcast in the next couple of weeks, so I'll have to tune in there. But yeah, the company brain, through all of those transcripts that you can decode, all the meeting notes that you're already taking. It's incredibly powerful context to be able to make decisions. And now with Claude, you can link to your payroll, you can link to your CRM, to your website, to your Google Drive or SharePoint, and you can ask it to search more context of all of the different things you're doing, even down into your emails. So we're not quite at the point of Iron Man where you're asking your AI to do things for you, but we're getting closer and closer. Claude just came out with yesterday the ability to move a mouse and a keyboard, and that's going to transform so many people. So I would guess 2 to 4 years, more and more companies will go back to installing servers on premise so that they can run their own internal AI models. Because every time you send ChatGPT or Claude whatever confidential documents you're training the model, and that becomes context. So yeah, a couple like just key points. Learn how to prompt. Maybe Luke, you can help me put in my recommended prompt into the show notes here. Record everything and add it to a company brain, and then yeah, just learn from other people. Hey, how are you using AI? It's almost like a dinner starter question now. that could be pretty powerful.
Totally. And I would actually I would encourage folks to use AI to help learn AI too. I met with our head of planning yesterday, and he's just been keeping a list of things that he thought might be useful. That's AI could help him out with. And he said, "All right, here are the things I'm working on. Can you help me like design prompts so that I can get the right output from you?" And it the AI came back with and said, "Hey, if you're looking to get details on the parcel information, here's what you should say to me, etc." That's one. I've got one other tool recommendation, if I could. Superhuman for emails, game changer. If we're talking about tech tools with AI enabled, it probably saves me.
I've been playing with it. What's your favorite part about it?
You have been using it.
Hmm.
The fact that it probably saves me at least 5 hours a week of my time. I think I had the Superhuman does like an end of year wrapped, kind of like the Spotify wrapped. Like, let's look at your year in review, and I'm in the top 1% for emails sent and emails received. And so I get a lot of volume, and the ability to use shortcuts and move through my inbox, the ability to remind me to follow up with people if they don't respond, the ability to use AI drafting. I use Whisperflow as a voice dictation software that goes right into when I'm drafting emails. Superhumans learned my voice and how I like to write, and I can get to a near final draft, in a couple seconds. And so all of those micro transactions that it enables accumulate to, my estimate is at least 5 hours of my time back that I can focus on other things.
Do you manage your own inbox, or do you have an assistant helping you?
I do have an assistant who handles the kind of the more transactional emails and other things. But yeah, I'm doing most of the drafting.
This has been an amazing conversation. If you were going to end with, any nugget of wisdom that you didn't get to share, to our audience, anything else you'd like to leave before we close up?
Yeah. I would say if you're thinking about kind of blending entrepreneurship and AI, if you're thinking about dabbling in entrepreneurship, do it. Right. I think it's an exciting time that we live in now to be able to make impact, and whether that's driven by your faith desire to improve the condition of the people around you, or you see a business opportunity, I would encourage people to try. Right, it blends with this AI conversation we were just happening. Like, if you've been on the fence or you've had the ideas, go pursue them. Life is short, and my goal is, like I said, my goal is for everyone out there to be thriving in their own individual ways. So with the democratization and these tools to enable you to do it, go do it.
Awesome. If people want to find out more information about you or Sage, where should they go, Ryan?
Yeah, you can go to our website, sageinvestment.com. Feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn, or you can email me at ryan@sageinvestment.group.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time. Looking forward to having this go live.
Awesome. Thanks, Nick.
Thank you for hanging out with us today and for listening to the On the Rise podcast. This show is for entertainment purposes only. Nothing said on this show should be considered financial advice. Before making any financial decisions, please consult with a professional. This show is copyrighted by the On the Rise podcast. Written permissions must be granted before syndication or rebroadcasting.